If you've made it this far, you must be just as hooked as we are. But this is only the beginning. Tomorrow's chapter will reveal a twist you won't see coming. So don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Whether it's a cozy corner in New York or a quiet night in Manila, your story matters too. Let's build this storytelling family together. A mother's fight against lies, wealth, and a broken love. Madeline Reyes was only 27 when her world turned upside down. Just a year into her marriage, her husband, Cole Bennett, was in a devastating car accident on a rainy night just outside Austin. The doctors said he had suffered severe brain trauma. He may never wake up, they told her gently, as if trying to cushion the blow. But for Madeline, there was no room for giving up. Not when the man she loved lay unconscious, in a hospital bed attached to machines, his strong hands now lifeless by his side. She sold her car, left her job as a nurse, and moved into a modest apartment barely 900 square feet in size, just walking distance from the long-term care center. Every morning at 7 a.m., she showed up at Cole's room with warm towels and soft music. She read to him, sang to him, played his favorite jazz records from the old days. Most people would have walked away. Most people would have said, "It's time to move on." But Madeline couldn't. Her love wasn't built on convenience. It was built on something deeper: loyalty, faith, and the belief that one day Cole would open his eyes again. And then came the biggest miracle of all. 6 months into his coma, Madeline found out she was pregnant, not with one child, but 2, twin boys. She cried that night, sitting alone in the hallway of the hospital, her hand gently resting on her stomach. "They'll never know you," she whispered through tears. But even in her heartbreak, she made a promise. If Cole couldn't raise them, she would. She would tell them every story, show them every photo, let them know the kind of man their father was. Throughout her pregnancy, she kept coming. Even when her ankles swelled, when the Texas summer heat made it hard to breathe, she was there. Nurses came and went. Even doctors changed shifts and faces, but Madeline remained. She brought baby clothes to show Cole. She placed headphones on his ears so the babies could hear their father's favorite music. She decorated the room with soft blues and tiny stars. She never stopped hoping. At 38 weeks, she gave birth to 2 healthy baby boys, 6.4 and 6.7 pounds. She named them Miles and Luca, after Cole's favorite jazz musicians. And just 3 days after they were born, she brought them to the hospital. She held them in her arms, one on each side, and whispered, "Meet your dad, he's been waiting for you." That night, something changed. For the first time in 2 years, Cole's fingers twitched. 3 days after Madeline brought her newborn sons to meet their father, the impossible happened. Cole Bennett opened his eyes. It was slow at first, a twitch of his fingers, a flutter of the eyelids. Then, like a miracle unfolding in real time, he blinked and whispered, "Where am I?" Madeline froze. Her heart leapt into her throat. She rushed to his side, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Cole, it's me, it's Madeline. You're awake," she cried, holding his hand, but Cole didn't respond the way she hoped. His gaze drifted past her, confused, blank, distant. The doctors called it post-traumatic amnesia, a common occurrence after a long coma. They said memories might return over time. Might. But for now, Cole remembered nothing. Not their wedding, not the accident, not even her. Still, Madeline wasn't shaken. She stayed by his side every day. She told him stories, showed him photos, introduced him to their sons. She thought love could bridge the gap. She didn't see what was coming. Just 2 weeks later, while Madeline was out buying diapers, Brooke Wallace walked into Cole's hospital room. Perfect hair, designer heels, and the same smug confidence she always wore in high school. She was Cole's ex-girlfriend, and his wealthy family's favorite. The moment she saw Cole awake, she claimed she was his fiancée, that they were planning to get married before the accident. And Cole believed. Her Madeline came back that evening to find Brooke sitting beside Cole, laughing like nothing had changed. She was stunned. "What is she doing here?" she asked, trying to keep calm. Brooke smiled without looking at her. "I'm here with my fiancé," she said, tightening her grip on Cole's arm. Cole looked at Madeline, puzzled. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" Those 5 words shattered her world. Over the next few days, everything spiraled. Cole's powerful mother, Evelyn Bennett, stepped in. She never liked Madeline, said she wasn't Bennett material. Now, with Cole's memory gone, she had the perfect excuse to erase Madeline from their lives. Lawyers showed up. Nurses changed. Security guards were suddenly posted at the door. Madeline tried everything. Pictures, documents, even their marriage certificate. But Brooke and Evelyn were always one step ahead. They planted doubt, twisted facts, and used Cole's confusion against her. Then the unthinkable happened. One morning, Madeline arrived at the hospital and was stopped at the front desk. "I'm sorry," the nurse said awkwardly. "You've been removed from the visitor list." "What?" Madeline blinked in disbelief. "I'm his wife." "I know," the nurse whispered, glancing around nervously. "But they said you're not allowed anymore." She stood outside the hospital, holding her babies in the pouring rain, heartbroken. Her husband was alive but didn't remember her. Her children were being stolen from her, and her love, the love she fought so hard to protect, was slipping away. But Madeline wasn't done yet. If they thought she would just walk away, they didn't know her at all. Weeks passed. Madeline Reyes was shut out of Cole's life completely. Every door she knocked on was slammed in her face. Custody papers, visitation rights, even DNA tests. They twisted it all. Evelyn Bennett's legal team had more money, more power and more reach than Madeline could have imagined. She was tired, broke, raising 2 infants on her own in a rundown apartment. But she wasn't broken. One afternoon, while sorting through an old box of adoption papers she'd never had the courage to open, something strange caught her eye, a photo, faded, water-stained, but still clear enough. A woman holding her, labeled, "To my little Madeline, you'll always be my greatest treasure. Love, Mum." But it wasn't the handwriting that stopped her cold. It was the necklace the woman was wearing, a silver locket with a green emerald center. The exact same locket she'd seen a dozen times in business magazines, worn by Laura Greer, the late wife of Franklin Greer, the oil tycoon from Houston. Could it be? She thought it was a coincidence until she found a second photo tucked behind the first. This time, Laura stood beside a man in a tailored suit, Franklin Greer, one of the wealthiest men in the country, and standing in front of them was her, as a toddler. Madeline's heart raced. She did what anyone would do. She Googled everything, every article, every news clipping. Franklin and Laura Greer had a daughter who went missing at age 5. Her name was Madeline. Police suspected a kidnapping, but the trail had gone cold. The case was abandoned. Franklin never stopped searching. That night, shaking with nerves, Madeline sent an email to the Greer Foundation with nothing more than the subject line, "I think I might be your daughter." She didn't expect a reply, but the next morning her phone rang. A deep voice answered. "Is this Madeline Reyes?" "Yes," she whispered. "This is Franklin Greer. I've been waiting 22 years to hear your voice." Her knees nearly gave out. Within hours, a private plane was waiting for her. She flew to Houston, babies in tow. Security escorted her straight to the Greer estate, 15,000 square feet of polished marble, velvet drapes and oil paintings older than the state itself. Franklin stood at the top of the stairs, eyes glassy, hands shaking. "It's you," he said, walking down slowly. "My daughter, my little girl." There was no need for DNA tests, but they did them anyway. The results were undeniable. Madeline Reyes, the woman rejected by the Bennett family, tossed aside like a stranger, was not just someone's wife. She was the heir to one of the most powerful families in America, a legacy stolen, now returned. But she didn't want revenge. She wanted justice, and she was going to use every ounce of her new power to fight for her children, because no one steals from a Greer, not anymore. It didn't take long for the world to notice that Madeline Reyes was no longer just the girl with the twins or the ex-nurse from Austin. She was now Madeline Greer, the only heir to the multi-billion-dollar Greer oil legacy, and suddenly everything changed. The headlines exploded. "Missing Greer daughter found after 22 years. From nurse to heiress, And most notably, Bennett family scandal, Cole's real wife returns with power. But with power came war. Evelyn Bennett was eyes furious. The woman she had tried so hard to erase had now returned with more money, more influence, and more truth than anyone in their circle could ignore. Cole, still struggling with fragments of memory, was caught in the middle, torn between what he was being told and what his heart had started to whisper. And Brooke, she doubled down. She played the perfect fiancée in public, tears at press conferences, soft interviews claiming she was just protecting Cole's peace. But behind the scenes she was ruthless. She hired private investigators, bribed Madeline's former neighbors, and even tried to forge documents to challenge her marriage. But Madeline was done playing nice. She moved into a private estate outside Dallas with her sons Miles and Luca, and began gathering evidence. Real evidence, videos, signatures, medical records, everything they had tried to bury. She had a team now, attorneys, PR experts, and her father's full support. Then something unexpected happened. Cole began asking questions. He saw a video, one Madeline had recorded during his coma. She was sitting beside him, reading from their wedding vows, voice shaking but full of love. He couldn't stop watching it, and then, like a switch flipping in his brain, he remembered her laugh, their first date, their wedding day, everything. He rushed out of the Bennett estate that night, ignoring his mother's threats, Brooke's fake tears, and his advisor's warnings. He showed up at Madeline's gate at midnight, soaking wet from a Texas thunderstorm, and begged her to let him in. But it wasn't that simple anymore. "You don't just get to show up," she told him, holding the door halfway open. "You let them erase me, erase us." "I didn't know what was real," he said quietly. "But now I do. It's you. It's always been you." She didn't speak. Just let the silence settle. "I don't want revenge," she finally said. "I want a safe life for my boys, for our boys. I want the truth to matter again." Cole nodded. "Then let's fight together." But the Bennetts weren't done. Days later, Brooke staged a media ambush at the boys' preschool, claiming Madeline was unstable. Paparazzi swarmed the gates. Evelyn filed for emergency guardianship. And that same night, someone tried to break into Madeline's home. It was no longer just a love story, it was war. And Madeline Greer wasn't just fighting for Cole, she was fighting for her family's future. The night of the break-in changed everything. Madeline stood over her son's cribs, clutching a baseball bat in one hand, her heart pounding in her chest. The intruder had fled before police arrived, but the message was clear. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was a threat, a warning from the Bennett family that she was getting too close to taking back everything they'd stolen. Franklin Greer responded immediately. Armed security was stationed at every entrance, surveillance installed, and a formal lawsuit was filed against the Bennetts for defamation, fraud, and emotional harm. Madeline wasn't hiding anymore. She was stepping into the spotlight, with power, truth, and an army behind her. Meanwhile, Cole Bennett had finally cut ties with his mother. He moved out of the Bennett estate, returned the engagement ring to Brooke, and gave a public statement, admitting that Madeline was, and always had been, his legal wife and the mother of his children. But the storm wasn't over. Days later, Miles and Luca were kidnapped from their preschool. Panic set in. Madeline collapsed when she got the call. Cole was already on the road before she even hung up. Police were dispatched. Amber alerts went live. Helicopters scanned the city. Hours felt like years. And then a message came through. A grainy video clip of the boys tied up in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. There was a note. "Come alone. Bring no one. You have 3 hours." Madeline didn't hesitate. She grabbed the keys, ignored Franklin's security detail, and drove. But Cole wasn't far behind. He had tracked her phone, knowing she'd go without him, because that's who she was: brave, selfless, stubborn to the core. They met at the old steel mill outside of Fort Worth, silent, wind whistling through broken windows. Inside, the scene was chaos. Evelyn stood there, wild-eyed, with Brooke by her side, holding the boys at arm's length. "You think you can take everything from us?" Evelyn shouted. "Our son, our legacy, our name?" "They were never yours to take," Madeline said. stepping forward. A scuffle broke out. Brooke lunged, Evelyn screamed, but Cole was faster. He grabbed Miles. Madeline swept up Luca. Sirens blared in the distance. Within minutes, the kidnappers were arrested. The boys were safe, but Madeline wasn't. In the chaos, she'd been hit hard. Blood trickled from her side as she collapsed into Cole's arms. "Don't let them grow up without me," she whispered. "You're not going anywhere," he said. Holding her tighter, at the hospital she pulled through, barely. The doctors said it was a miracle. And it was, because the next morning Madeline Reyes-Grier opened her eyes, looked at her sons and smiled. Weeks later, under a sky full of Texas stars, Cole proposed to her again, this time with the twins by his side. No cameras, no lawyers. Just love. Madeline said yes because after everything, the pain, the loss, the fight, they were still standing, and this time no one was ever taking their family away again. This story was more than just about love. It was about loyalty, strength, and what it means to fight for the people you love, even when the world turns its back on you. If you've followed Madeline's journey from heartbreak to redemption, we want to hear from you. What moment hit you the hardest? Do you think Madeline made the right choices? Or maybe you have a story of your own that mirrors hers, a story of resilience, sacrifice, or second chances. No matter where you're watching from, your voice matters. Drop a comment below and let us know what part of the story moved you most and where in the world you're tuning in from. It helps us feel connected, like one big family brought together by powerful stories. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to catch the next chapter in our upcoming story. We've got something truly unforgettable coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. We're reading every comment. Let's talk.